This is Will at FW Arms. I want to talk a little bit more about the dynamic hold down that we make. This hold down, we showed you in our last video how it can make your swaging much more consistent by the way it operates. We can also use the hold down in priming to make their primer depth consistency way more consistent. Using some cases that I've drawn up here again, we're going to detail how the dynamic hold down works at the various case dimensions. When you go to set your hold down, on your first case, you're setting your hold down to the bottom internal dimension of your case. That's where the powder sits. That's your first case that you're setting off of. But because the depth of the case where the powder sits can vary from case to case in relation to where the case head is, you could end up with a whole variance of case dimensions that can cause havoc with your priming depth. So you've been priming, you've set your hold down with your first case. Then you can come to another case. And let's say the bottom of that internal dimension there is a little deeper than the case that you originally set your rod off of. Now all of a sudden your guide rod's going to come down here and you're going to have this gap where your case is going to try to be. What's going to happen is the priming ram is going to come up. It's going to push the case into the guide rod. This is going to be an exaggerated drawing here, but your priming depth is going to be shallower, meaning your primer is not going to be inserted into the pocket as much, whereas the case that you set your original rod off of, your primer depth is right there, right below flush by about 5,000. And this brings us to our third scenario, where the depth to the bottom of the case where the powder sits is shallower than the previous two. What happens is your guide rod rams down into the case. This isn't too bad if it's only a few thousandths. Otherwise, if it's deeper, it will cause torque on your tool head, a lot of strain on the parts of the press. In extreme cases, you can actually crush this primer pocket, and you'll fold the material inside the primer pocket. When you try to put a new primer in, you're going to start crushing primers. I have a blown up view of the pocket here. What would happen is your primer comes in, but then it bottoms out in this crushed section, and you'll start to fold and crush your primer. That's not good either. I've recreated another scenario here. We have some fresh cases. I want to talk about what can happen if you're using a static hold down versus the FW dynamic hold down. Let's say you get your guide rod all set over your priming station, and you've set it in such a manner that you're getting consistent priming until you get a few cases where you're getting that primer that's coming out just a little bit. This is because your guide rod most likely has encountered a really deep case, and you have this gap here. So what you have is the primer sticking out roughly the amount of the gap. So you think to yourself, oh man, my priming is off. I'm going to adjust the primer ram depth. The ram's coming from the bottom. This is not a good idea, because what's going to happen is now you're going to get your cases to where they were originally with those dimensions, and you're going to have your hold down here. Even if it hits nicely at the bottom, your ram coming up from below is going to try to force the primer in further, because remember, now the case is back at an absolute position. Your priming ram, you've set it to go deeper. So now again, you're going to be crushing those primers in the pocket of your brass, and it's not going to end in good results for your shooting. So these examples here are just a few reasons why the dynamic hold down from FW Arms is such a great idea. We've taken the hold down die and we've applied a spring portion inside that allows the guide rod to move up and down. It can adjust to the varying case dimensions that you're going to have when you're reloading. The spring pushes down with enough force so the case is always at an absolute position on your plate. That means when you push down, even the forces coming up are not going to counteract the spring. This is true for swaging. It's especially true for priming. Our priming consistency has become incredible on progressive presses. So if you want to get your priming to the next level, the FW Arms Dynamic Hold Down is the tool for you. You can get them on our website right now, www.fwarms.com. They are ready to ship. And of course, being an FW Arms product, it features the auto centering shuttle, so you can run at higher speeds and get that primer depth consistency without having to worry about nicking the necks on your high quality brass. My name is Will with FW Arms. Thanks for watching.